That is what I'd like her to respond to. It's a cop-out to say, well, if you feel it in your heart. We all want peace. Everyone on the earth wants peace. So if anybody coming to the earth like this at a news conference telling us peace is here, of course we're going to naturally want to accept it because we all want peace. I don't believe it. I believe it's the Antichrist.
Well, again, I can only say that everybody is entitled to their own belief. We present the information that's been made available to us simply for people to listen to judge for themselves. One can talk about the Christ without talking about all the Christian teaching because, as we've said, this is the world teacher. In the West is known as the Christ, but our understanding is that he is also the primary teacher for the age for all the great world's religions. And in their religions, there is no Antichrist.
Carol, wasn't he known in the East? I mean, the West hasn't been around, hasn't been civilized for a long time. In the East, wasn't he known as the Christ also?
Well, in the East, he is known as the fifth Buddha.
Middle East.
Pardon me?
East, I'm sorry, not the Far East, but the Middle East.
In the Middle East, depending on the... If they're Christians, he's known as the Christ. If not Christians, he is not known as the Christ. And the Antichrist teaching, you know, is... I'll tell you something interesting. It's especially strong in the United States. Especially strong. These kinds of questions...
Is that because of the fundamentalist beliefs here?
Apparently, from what Creme says, just really hardly come up any place but in the United States. Now, of course, if you go outside the domain of Christianity, they don't come up at all. So if we want to talk about the Christ and we're in New Delhi, for instance, we wouldn't even be discussing Christian doctrine or the Gospels or the Antichrist because they would want to discuss it in terms of Krishna or the Bodhisattva, you see. So, again, we're not just speaking within a given tradition.
Let me ask this gentleman if he's really going to be upset if this is true and this man does represent all religions and not just Christianity. What is that going to do to you as a Christian, sir?
Well, I hope this doesn't sound too bold, but I am a Christian, and that's the way it is. I mean, I believe in...
Yeah, but my goodness gracious, do you think there is one God or five gods? Huh?
Will not be fooled. There is one God.
There is one God. Therefore, how do you look upon other religions? How do you look upon Buddhism?
I don't. It's not.
You don't think that Buddhism has the same God that Christianity has?
I don't know. I know I have one God, and there is only one God, and Christ is His Son, and He will come again to stop.
And if you are going to reject this person, if he says he is representative of 4 or 5 massive religions rather than just yours, boy, that's quite an ego trip you're on. Isn't that the same as saying that we must be the only people who exist in the universe?
Well, Stan, if you believe in a religion, whatever it is, and I know what mine is, if I believe in that, I must believe in what that...
Wrong! You're absolutely wrong. You can still believe in your particular religion, but there isn't just a Christian God, sir.
In my religion, that is the case, Stan.
Well, what happens to Jews when they die, then? Do they all go to hell?
Not a theologian.
What happened to Buddhists when they die? Muslims?
Pride and troubled.
You got to be kidding me. That is the most narrow-minded. You must be a fundamentalist, because fundamentalists are the only ones that I know of who cannot see the rest of the world. They can only see their own narrow world.
Fundamentalist at all. I'm a Roman Catholic. I hope that didn't blow you out of the water.
Well, no, that doesn't blow me out of the water, but I am surprised.
No,
I am surprised. Do you consider Baptists as good Christians? Okay. Guy hung up on me. You see what happens, Carol, when you challenge them a little bit?
Well, you know, everybody has their own opinion, and some express it very strongly. And
well, is this hypothetically? Okay, are you there, Carol?
Here.
Okay, fine. I'm learning a whole new technique because we're working out of an alternate studio. Hypothetically speaking, if you're right, if Benjamin Creme is right, could not, if this man is the man we have all been waiting for in all religions, could he not in fact destroy the world because of thinking like this last person?
Well, if he's the one we've all been waiting for, he couldn't destroy the world, because if he's the one we've been waiting for, that is not his nature. We're not waiting for somebody to...
But he may not be able to control that.
...to come and embody.
I mean, what is going to happen when he doesn't drop in to visit the Pope?
Pardon me?
What's going to happen when he doesn't drop in to visit the Pope at the Vatican?
Well, I'll tell you what Ben has been saying about that. What he says is that the Master Jesus will take over a certain amount of responsibility for the Church of Rome. In other words, the Master Jesus has the responsibility for overseeing the Catholic Church and Christianity. And I'm sure that when the time comes, when the day of declaration comes around, and the time comes that the Master Jesus will begin exercising authority in the Catholic Church, and for a long time there's been a teaching, the teaching that many of us have been studying, that says that around this time we would have the last Pope elected, and Ben's message is that this is the last Pope, and that office will be filled once the Christ is in the world by the Master Jesus.
Let me ask you this. Another thing that Mr. Creme said, which I found very fascinating, is that among the teachers who are going to also be with the Master are some of the disciples who were around Christ.
Yes, I think that's not quite a one-to-one relation. I myself don't know the details about that. I know that...
You did mention St. Paul and St. Peter.
Are by now masters, and that several of those will return, but I don't think that all of them will. And I know that, for instance, John the Baptist is no longer involved in planetary business, according to what Ben says, and is not going to be present. So I don't know myself exactly how many of the former disciples are masters and will be here, but what we understand from Ben is that 12 of the masters will be introduced to humanity right around the day of declaration. And when people see the Master Jesus side by side with the Christ, all of the confusion about the relationship between the two will be sorted out.
Okay, I've got to take another break, Carol. We'll put you on hold. Thank you very much. 365-4100. We will continue with your calls concerning the Second Coming, the Messiah, etc. here on the Stan Major program. It is 16 minutes before the hour of 4. All righty, let's continue with your calls for Carol Joy. Carol, you're still with us?
With you.
Okay, good. Let's go to another caller here. You're on the air with Carol Joy in Washington. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm making this call, and I want to ask her this question because she has referred to, as you have noticed, this person as the Christ. I'm a Christian, and I'm a practicing Catholic, however, not... let me ask the question that... I don't believe I've lost my track of thought. Stan, can you throw me back on hold 1 second?
No, I can't. Why don't you just relax? What are you trying to say? Let me draw you out.
She referred to him as the Christ.
Mm-hmm. But he is not just the second coming for Christians.
I remember.
Represents all religions. You understand?
I've never done this before with all the calls I've made. I have such an interest in this topic.
Why don't you try to call us back, because we have a lot of people who want to reach her. You're on the air with Carol Joy. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hear you.
Okay. I'm familiar with a lot of the Eastern tradition. I went to India when I was 18, and I wanted to ask you, in reference to like Maharishi, I practice transcendental meditation, and he talks about the dawn of the age of enlightenment, which is which we're supposedly in now, which is the Aquarian age, and I was wondering how that refers to the Christ, and if you know anything in reference to where Maharishi would be in relation to him as a master, whether you're familiar with him or what.
Yes, I am, of course, familiar with Maharishi, and quite a significant number of people, in fact, who've gotten interested in all of this are practitioners of transcendental meditation. I am not, and I don't have any personal information about the Maharishi's position. I do know that the people who do practice TM indicate to us that while the Maharishi has said nothing in particular about an individual, that he says that it's appropriate to have great expectations for this spring, and that people find no conflict who are practitioners, and a number of them are instructors in TM, find no conflict whatsoever between their practice and this movement and this teaching.
Where did you develop your knowledge of this?
Well, some years before Benjamin Creme came along, I had taken to studying a body of material that was set down and published by Alice A. Bailey. And this material is very, very, very significant and excellent esoteric material that was published between 1919 and, I guess it was dictated between 1919 and 1939 and continued to be published into the 40s. And I had been studying that for quite a long time, and it laid out this kind of fusion of Eastern and Western thought and metaphysical reality and worldview. And so I was myself pretty deeply immersed in that and quite familiar with the predictions about the reappearance of the Christ and who he was and what it would mean, so that when Ben came along and spoke the same language from the same tradition, I already recognized.
4581.
Yes, it is.
I have an emergency call for you from Mr. John Gallo. Will you accept it?
All right, ma'am. We're going to have to disconnect you, sir. Thank you very much for your call.
So,
Everything is happening today. Hello.
Hey.
You're on with Carol Joy. Go ahead.
Yes, I just tuned in a few minutes ago, but I wanted to ask, is this a worldwide announcement, or is it restricted to the United States?
Shall I answer?
Yes, go ahead, Carol.
Yes, it's a worldwide announcement. What precipitated this whole conversation on the radio here is that announcements were placed in newspapers around the world that the world teacher known in the West as the Christ was in the world and would in fact become known for who he is in a very short time.
You were having trouble, or Mr. Creme was having trouble getting the word out in America until his appearance on the Merv Griffin show, correct?
Information out, and gradually the audiences have grown to where now they're quite significant, and his book has been published in quite a number of languages around the world. So it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yes, I know that, but see, what I was trying to wonder, where does your backing or financing for a worldwide campaign, which must utterly go into billions of dollars, which I can only see that the Arab petrodollars can finance something like that. I don't see a group of cultists, a small group. I mean, where is the bulk of your money coming from to finance such a massive worldwide campaign? I don't think anybody in the United States can afford that.
I think if you were more familiar with how this has happened, you'd realize that you're quite a long ways out on what the costs were. But let me start at the end and work backward. The ad campaign, I would say, cost about $200,000, and that money was raised in donations from people who are sympathetic with this and contributed what they could. Some people had more money and some had less. Some people sent $2 and some sent $100, some sent $5,000 in. That's where the money came from. All of the lecturing that's been done over the years by Benjamin Creme has been done with no fee whatsoever going to him. He is invited to speak in various locations. The sponsors of the talk put the money up for his airfare and for rental, and a donation is asked at the lecture. The money from the lectures goes to reimburse the people for their expenses. Then is put up at the homes of the sponsors, so there'd be no hotel expenses. And everything except for a very small core of people paid minimum salaries. Everything is done by volunteers, and Benjamin Creme does not make a penny from it.
Okay, ma'am, thank you very much for your call. We'll be right back with Carol Joy on the Stan Major program.
WWDB.
All righty, 5 minutes before the hour, and Carol Joy is with us. Carol, again, you say the news conference is set for when and where?
Friday, May 14th in Los Angeles.
All right, now, and Mr. Creme is going at that time to reveal what?
He's going to reveal the country and the city and the group or community with whom the Christ works. He will reveal that to the assembled press.
But he is not going to reveal specifically where this person is or a name or anything?
There he is. I mean, you couldn't get much more specific, could you, than the country and the city and the community or group. I mean, that points people right in the right direction, but it does not tell them who it is.
Uh-huh.
They will have to find out for themselves.
And then is Mr. Creme still saying that that the master is going to take to the airwaves
Yes.
sometime in the future? When might that be?
Well, he doesn't say when that will be, but he does say that following this announcement of his, that people will, of course, having been alerted to this, a number of them for quite a long time now, will, of course, try to locate him. And that once he's located, that he will speak to the press in some way, and after that, a time will be set at which he will be asked to speak to the world. And by the end of this spring, which means, the 20th of June, by the end of the spring, this will all be an accomplished fact. So we're not talking about much of a time scale.
All right, let me ask you this. I haven't read or seen anything on national television or in national periodicals about this. Is that because Newsweek and Time or the Washington Post or the New York Times your full-page ad must have been read by the editors of the New York Times? It seems to me that maybe they would have taken an interest and possibly have done a story in conjunction with your ad, but I've seen nothing.
I would have thought the same thing, to tell you the truth. I can tell you that many of the major media have contacted Tara Center in New York or Los Angeles, especially in New York, and that some of them, some of the most major, I won't go into it now, but some of them will be in attendance at that press conference.
All right.
I think they're probably waiting before, they know this is pretty serious, you know. They can't dismiss it as just another cult with another crazy message. And at the same time, they can't be sure enough about it to treat it seriously. So I think they're going to wait till they have something fairly concrete. And while there's been a tremendous amount of local media, you are right. We've certainly heard from the New York Times that their phones are ringing off the hook.
All right, let's take another call here so we can give the caller ample time to talk before the news. And you will stay with us, I hope, until 4:30. Okay, Carol?
Pardon me?
You will stay with us till 4:30, I hope. You will be able to stay with us till 4:30?
Till 4:30, yes.
Good. All right, let's take another call. You're on with Carol Joy?
Okay. Carol Joy?
Yeah, she's listening. Go ahead.
Carol, I am a teacher of biblical theology, and in listening to you today and the last time you were on, I went to, I guess, to ask you a question, that don't you know what you are saying is in direct opposition to the Christian faith or the Christian belief, and that Jesus in the New Testament records.
I think I've covered that ground so much that.
Yes, I think we have tried to describe, sir, that what you are reading in the New Testament, although you firmly believe what you read in the New Testament, it still is a book written by men.
Mr. Major,
okay.
Carol Joy mentioned Peter.
I'm going to have to put you on hold. I'm going to have to put you on hold, sir. We'll be right back after the news. Don't go away. Thank you, Walter. We will have an update on Delaware Valley traffic at 4:15 here on the Stan Major program. Be back to your calls with Carol Joy in Washington in a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stan Major.
Thank you very much. Going to be sunny and pleasant for the rest of today. The winds will be northerly, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Tonight, clear and cool, lows 45. Winds light and variable. Tomorrow, sunny and pleasant. Highs will be about 72 to 75 degrees. Right now in Philadelphia, it is 72 degrees. Carol Joy is with us. And I think we've got all the bugs out of the technical system, Carol. If you can hear me, we're in good shape.
Yes.
All right, fine. Let's go back to another call at 365-4100 for Carol. You're on the air.
Stan, you cleared up some of the questions that I had in mind in your last exchange with Carol, but I would like to understand better, in this press conference that's going to take place on the 14th, will a time be indicated beside the place, or will it just be a place and a nebulous time?
Well, It will just be a place, and in a sense a nebulous time, in that the date is, there's not going to be any date declared by Benjamin Creme for what the Christ is going to do and when. However, has said consistently that by the end of this spring, which he understands to be the middle of June approximately, by the end of this spring, the Christ will have spoken to the world, overshadowed all of humanity on this planet.
Before I get to the next question, or the next main question, I want to ask, why the secrecy? Why can't...
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll tell you what he says, and it certainly coincides with my own experience. In the first place, there is, in a sense, the prophecy that says, if the one to whom you point, be careful, that is not the Christ. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, if somebody were to point to this individual and say, this is the Christ, then you would be denied your right of spiritual recognition, because you would be told by somebody who is perhaps in a position of authority or who has convinced you who this man is, and then you would accept what this man is saying because you were told that he's somebody extraordinarily significant. What in fact needs to happen is that people, hopefully, will hear the message and have been listening to the message that we need to end world hunger, share the world's resources, have peace on the earth, and that when finally we see this man, we'll say, that message makes sense to me, I therefore accept it. And in so doing, it will be fine for us to discover that he's the Christ without having had somebody tell us that and have us just believe it on authority. We will understand that what we know in our hearts to be true, this man is saying, and we will find him real to us and far more acceptable. There's one more point, and that is that he is a man. He is a human being who has evolved farther along than we have, but has evolved to the point where he can embody this divine energy. As a human being, we need to identify with him. And as he has emerged as an ordinary man in a community with people around him who've gotten to know him, who have heard him lecture every week, every Saturday night, or Saturday day, I don't know whether it's day or night, but every Saturday at some point, for a very long time, he has become known as someone with whom we can identify. And had he been pointed out from the beginning as this great divine figure, we would have missed all of those kinds of experiences.
Carol, I'm going to ask you a terrible question, but in this day and age...
really divine law to infringe upon our free will.
Carol, can you hear me?
Oui, of course.
I'm going to ask you a terrible question, but it's a question which has to be asked in this day and age, because we've had a Pope shot, we've had Anwar Sadat assassinated, Reagan has been shot, Kennedy has been shot. Is this person vulnerable?
No, he is not vulnerable.
I'd like to ask another question, which, it leads up into this. At the beginning of your discussion, Stan, with Carol, you questioned the reason for the title, and why not another title, such as Messiah, and the answer was that in the West, another title wouldn't be recognized. The majority of the peoples in this world are not Christian. They are Mohammedans, Buddhists, Confucius, all kinds of other religions.
That's right.
Constitute the majority of people. And they would no more recognize one foreign title than another.
Yes.
Then is this title being used, and why, if this person is going to be revealed in a certain country, a certain town, a certain city, whatever, how will he then get to all of the other peoples who will not recognize him at first glance?
All right. I think that's a very good question, and you're right. You're right. The majority of the world's peoples are by no means Christian. My understanding is that this is the scenario, that once the Christ has been discovered, given the hints that the media will have as a result,